Come November, Americans will decide who best to lead the nation at a time when unemployment remains high and many families are still worried about paying their bills. One woman who's been taking the pulse of voters across the country, former Alaska Governor Sarah Palin, who's been outspoken with her concerns about leadership and why she feels Americans remain frustrated. Governor, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here.
I know you're joining us from Phoenix, and next week you're going to be headlining the online conference called the Right Online, headlining that effort. What impact do you think it will have?
I think it should be quite impacting. It gives us an opportunity to contrast what private sector enterprise and the entrepreneurial spirit that built America is versus Obama's failed policies that really are centered on growing the federal government and taking economic freedom away from our small businessmen and women, especially as we try to reinvest the products of our labor and hire more people. We'll be able to point out some of those contrasts between policies.
I know that you speak to a lot of people across the board, every month, and people who are really suffering and hurting and really looking for leadership in this nation. And that's something you're really concerned about. Can you tell me what you're hearing from voters out there when it comes to the question of leadership?
Well, it's not just hardcore conservatives, fiscal conservatives in the Republican Party, but it's many, many independents and just good patriotic Democrats who are understanding that President Obama's policies are failing this country. When you have 23 million Americans underemployed and unemployed and millions more on food stamps and those having to rely on government or feeling invited to rely on government instead of their own work ethic in order to survive, so many Americans are understanding that we do need a choice come November. Do we need to continue down this downward trajectory in our economy based on President Obama's failed policies that are kind of modeled after failed socialist nations, or can we go another direction and can we allow the private sector to grow and thrive? That's what I'm hearing from Americans, is that great concern.
Speaking of the private sector, I'd like to get your reaction to the president's remarks yesterday saying that the private sector was just fine.
Oh, absolutely out of whack comment, but very indicative of his thinking about what it's going to take even to get our economy back on the right track. If he truly believes, until somebody dinged him and said, get back on there, in front of the cameras and explain yourself a bit better, and gave him some talking points. But for him to truly believe that the private sector is doing okay in this time of economic woes is quite indicative of he being quite out of touch with what the normal working man and woman is feeling today in America.
What about his claim that he, under his watch, 4.3 million jobs have been created, and that the real concern comes from states where local municipalities have really been hurting because of budget cuts there, and that's why we're seeing a slower pace when it comes to job creation?
Well, it's quite unfortunate that President Obama had no experience coming into this office of the presidency, no private sector experience and no local or state government really experience, except for his time as a lawmaker, but not as an administrator in a state. He not understanding that, no, there is a proper role for local and state and the federal government in our lives, but that's to allow infrastructure to be built in order to provide a tool for the private sector to be able to grow and thrive. And instead, he believes that local and state governments need to grow and take more of what the private sector earns and produces and reinvest it according to politicians' priorities, and growing government is the answer. Again, a comment like that is quite indicative of his idea that government is the answer. And instead, most Americans, I believe, understand that often is the case, government is the problem. It's not the solution.
Stand by, Governor, because I know you've agreed to answer some of our viewer questions. They're going to be coming up in just a moment, so we appreciate the fact that you're going to stick around for that, and we'll be back with you shortly, in just a moment. Welcome back, everybody. Well, we're back live, and we're very happy to have her, Governor Sarah Palin, live from Scottsdale, Arizona. Governor, we have some questions our viewers have sent us through Twitter and Facebook. Now, we received a lot of questions, but we're not going to be able, of course, to get to them all, but here are just a few. From Facebook, Jan Nicholson Page is asking, during an interview last year with Sean Hannity, you discussed the possibility of a third party if the GOP continued to resist the new crop of common sense conservatives. Do you still think this is a possibility?
Oh, well, Jan hit the nail on the head there in suggesting that it's a possibility that the GOP would kind of disenfranchise or invalidate this new crop of fiscal conservatives and independents who just want to get the economy back on the right track. Heaven forbid we see that in the next few months. Or yeah, there is that possibility of a third party rising, but that's only if the GOP power players would choose to kind of co-opt this new crop of fiscal conservatives. Let's hope that doesn't happen.
You know, in the 2010 election, we saw a whole new wave of conservatives coming into Congress, but so far there's been a mixed reaction to their performance, and some folks are rather disappointed about some of the folks that came in on the Tea Party wave. What do you say?
Well, you know, and then on the flip side, we have those who have stood so strong, like Alan West and others who have said, no, I won't be co-opted by some of those power players in that GOP machine who still want this controlling hand over the GOP mechanisms. And we have a good freshman crop in there who is, you know, they're trying to do the right thing and getting government back on the side of the people and get it off our backs. And we need to continue to encourage that new crop of lawmakers who understand what government's proper role is.
Okay, on to another Facebook question. If Governor Romney, does win the presidency, what position in a Romney administration suits you best, and would you accept it?
Oh, hypotheticals like that, I think, require someone to be quite pretentious and believe that that would ever happen. I really don't see that happening. Thank goodness, you know, there are millions of Americans quite qualified, quite pro-private sector who would fit well in a cabinet that's led by a GOP person like Romney. And, you know, I don't think it's going to be me in there, but thankfully we have a lot of Americans who are ready and willing to serve.
We have lots of folks out there still wondering also, though, if you have an eye to 2016.
I never know what will happen.
You never know. It's so far ahead.
No, this is America. You know, anything is a possibility. And thank God we have the freedom to choose what it is that we will do with vocations and avocations. We have the opportunities, you know, nowhere else but in America.
Okay, from Twitter now, we've got Terrence, OR63, who's asking, are we going to see the big blue bus this summer? Lots of folks love that big blue bus.
And we love that big blue bus. We had just a blast on that One Nation tour. I don't know, maybe this go around we'll do something a little bit more Alaskan. Maybe Todd can take his little Piper Super Cub Bush Pilot airplane off his skis and floats. We'll put it on wheels. Maybe we'll wrap that and travel around the nation talking to Americans about how wonderful and exceptional this country is and how to kind of save this country via that Piper Super Cub.
Well, I know it was very effective as you met across the country when you went on your bus tour. Lots of folks connected with you in a very special way, and it was something that meant a great deal to you. Do you think you're going to try to do something along that line before the election?
I would love to be able to continue to be out there talking to good, hard-working Americans who understand what our foundation is. You know, our economy is built on basically these two tenets of natural resource development opportunities, seizing those responsibly, and expecting reward for work ethic. Those two things combined built the foundation of our economy, and we've got to get back to that in order to save our economy. So talking to Americans, hearing their ideas, sharing ideas with them, along those lines it's refreshing, it's healthy, and hopefully it helps lead to some productive and constructive conversation and solutions in our country.
Absolutely. Governor, we are out of time with the questions, but we're so happy you could join us today and share your insights. We always love having you on.
Thank you so much. Keep up the great work.
Thank you very much. Take care. Well, reports say that China's space program is one